Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We are going to get started with our 2025 year in review. I'm Ellen Canali. I'm head of communications here at SDF, and we are super excited to have you all tuning in. Today, we're going to take a step back from the day-to-day and take a look at what happened on the network in 2025. A lot of you were here for it, so it may not be surprising, but we're excited to talk about what shipped, what scaled, and where momentum is coming from. I think it's safe to say that 2025 was not just another year of progress. It was a huge year marked by a lot of validation. We saw big names jump into the space head first, which set off a domino effect that changed the conversation from is blockchain viable to where does it work and how should it be deployed best. So over the next half an hour, we're going to walk through how that shift showed up on Stellar. You'll see how partners across different contexts, from global asset managers to major payment companies to sovereign governments, used open infrastructure to solve concrete financial problems. You're going to see how the activity translated into measurable network growth, from developers and active accounts to TVL and real-world assets on chain. As always, and if you are new to this stream, we'll leave time for questions at the end. We're excited to hear from you, and you can submit those at any point. With that, let's get started. So today I'm joined by Danelle Dixon, our CEO and Executive Director, Jose Fernandez de Ponte, our President and Chief Growth Officer, and Tomer Weller, our Chief Product Officer. Danelle will open with macro forces that defined 2025 and marked it as an inflection point for open financial infrastructure. From there, we'll move into the numbers. We'll talk about the network activity, real usage, and the metrics that matter for adoption. And then we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about the year. You'll hear about institutions and payment companies, like I said, developers, governments using Stellar to solve the real problems that we talk about every day. And after that, we'll discuss the infrastructure and product momentum that made it all possible, including performance upgrades, privacy, and the capabilities that are required for the next phase of adoption. So then Danelle will talk a little bit about the look ahead. We actually published the SDF strategy recently, and she's going to outline how we're going to carry forward what worked in 2025 into a focused 2026 direction, and how SDF is prioritizing how it can best support the network and the ecosystem. And then we will end it and lead to Q&A. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're super excited to be here, and I'm going to hand it over to Danelle to kick us off.
Well, thanks, Ellen, and hello, everyone. It's really great to be with you today. Thank you for joining. In 2025, the industry crossed a threshold. Regulation became clearer, adoption accelerated, and real deployments started to scale. Now, that shift brought institutional confidence, which has been awesome. It changed market expectations and made execution the new measure. So that's been an awesome change. And when we look at the activity on Stellar, it reflects a network that was really built to meet this moment: reliable, scalable, and useful. So in total, Stellar has processed 21.5 billion operations with 3.6 billion transactions in 2025 alone. That level of activity reflects sustained usage across a wide range of live financial applications and really keeps Stellar as one of the most used blockchains to date. The network maintained its 99.99% uptime, a performance characteristic that remained consistent even as overall activity increased. Transaction costs stayed super low, with the average fee per operation at approximately 0.0007 cents, supporting high frequency and high volume use cases. So by year's end, the network had reached 10.3 million unique users. So taken together, these metrics really show a network operating at scale with the reliability, the performance, and the cost structure that global financial infrastructure requires. So the foundation is what powers a thriving and growing financial ecosystem. So let's dig deeper into 2025. 2025 was one of the most exciting years we've seen in the last decade. The recognition that financial services is truly the killer use case was a huge, huge win for the industry. The work, commitment, and vision of Stellar builders really finally manifested, and frankly, it was really validated. The real opportunity now is not letting that momentum fade and seizing on all the progress that was made last year. So as we look back on 2025, we are going to start with some of the key areas that we tracked. The focus was on strengthening foundational building blocks and creating a really robust pipeline for 2026. So let me hand it over to Jose to walk us through where those metrics landed.
Thank you, Danelle. In 2025, we were very deliberate about where to focus our effort. We center on network activity that translates into durable use. You can see that in the numbers. Monthly active addresses reached 632,000, up 24% year on year. That reflects a steady growth in real users, not one-off spikes, not bots. The total value logged ended the year at 173 million, a 127% increase. This growth came from deployed production and from growth in our DeFi ecosystem. And on-chain real-world assets reached 785 million by the end of the year, up 158% year on year. We also expanded the set of tokenized treasuries on the network, and that progress matters because it brings regulated yield-bearing assets into active circulation. Then, in the first week of January, RWAs crossed 1 billion, a proof point that this network continues to grow each month, and it is already one of the largest blockchain ecosystems for real-world assets. All these results show sustained partners' execution. The focus helped clarify where SDF's work creates the most leverage. Importantly, this focus translated into some of the most meaningful integrations that we have seen on Stellar to date. With that foundation in place, I'll hand it back to Danelle.
All right. Well, thanks, Jose. It's really great to look back on how that focus translated into measurable progress. So Stellar has long attracted really serious builders that are focused on modernizing financial infrastructure. The regulatory clarity that came last year really accelerated this momentum, and 2025 marked blockchain's arrival as an accepted financial rail. And the proof is in who's building on it. Asset managers with trillions under management, major multinational banks, and payments giants serving hundreds of millions of customers globally. From early movers to new entrants, institutions recognize Stellar is the blockchain for financial services. So let's take a look at what was built and deployed on Stellar in 2025. So Franklin Templeton is a clear example of institutional adoption at scale, using public blockchain infrastructure to extend regulated financial products. On Stellar, Franklin Templeton has issued over $580 million in tokenized US treasuries and has seen 85% year-on-year growth in Benji, its asset. That growth reflects very specific institutional requirements being met in production. Multi-jurisdictional deployment that expands access to European institutional investors, Benji anchoring global liquidity for regulated on-chain yield products, and net new products offerings like intraday yield, which is a pretty awesome thing, which unlocks returns on capital even during partial trading days. What's important here isn't just the volume, it's the fact that these products operate reliably and at scale. With precise asset tracking and compliant settlement, Stellar really provides that infrastructure that makes it possible. So this is exactly what regulated on-chain finance looks like when it's purpose-built for institutional use. So next, let's go to US Bank. It's another example of how large banks are approaching programmable money in a disciplined way. Notably, it's the only major US bank that has publicly announced testing on an open infrastructure, among several of its peers that are actively exploring this space. They're assessing what it takes to issue and manage digital assets while staying aligned with regulatory and operational requirements from the start. So the key point in their assessment is where those requirements live. As Mike Villano notes, controls like asset freezing and transaction unwinding are built in to the base operating layer of this network. And that matters because banks need certainty around compliance, reversibility, and safeguards before anything moves forward. So for US banks, Stellar provides that infrastructure designed for those particular realities. It supports programmable money with native controls that align with how regulated financial institutions operate. So these are a couple snapshots of how institutions are engaging with real-world assets on Stellar. So let's look at how real-world assets showed up across the Stellar network in 2025. 2025 was a breakout year for real-world assets on Stellar. And as Jose mentioned earlier, RWA and stablecoin activity surpassed $1 billion on-chain, up 123% year over year. And I want to pause on that for a second, because that is a big deal. That level of capital moving through open infrastructure in live market conditions, it reflects real adoption at scale. Jose, I'll bring this to life with PayPal.
Thank you, Danielle. As some of you may know, this one is especially close to my heart. PYUSD is now the 4th largest USD stablecoin by market cap and the 3rd largest by number of holders. PayPal bringing PYUSD to Stellar is a concrete step towards stablecoins operated at global commerce scale. We are seeing that demand directly from merchants. In a recent survey by PayPal, 4 in 10 US merchants now accept digital assets already. The takeaway here, stablecoins are advancing steadily into everyday business use. So this is a payments leader that is extending regulated stablecoin infrastructure onto a network that is designed for speed, for cost efficiency, and reach. PYUSD on Stellar expands PayPal's stablecoin beyond EVM environments and onto a payments-optimized public blockchain. That matters because it supports real flows, cross-border payments, merchant settlement, payroll, working capital inside an already existing global network. At its core, this is PayPal choosing infrastructure that can support how money already moves at the scale that they operate. And I just landed from attending the Ondo Summit in New York City this week. So let's talk about what that team built on Stellar this year. USDY represents a meaningful expansion of how yield shows up on chain. This is a US Treasury-backed product designed for institutional standards, now accessible through a public blockchain. Ondo chose Stellar to launch USDY because the ecosystem supports regulated access, liquidity, and real distribution. USDY delivers short-duration Treasury exposure with a reported 5.3% APY, while maintaining the stability and accessibility that institutions require. What is notable here is reach. By launching on Stellar, institutional-grade yield becomes available to a broader on-chain user base without compromising liquidity or compliance. This brings institutional yield into an environment that is designed for real financial activity. Let's now also talk about an asset class that is gaining momentum, tokenized real estate. Red Swan shows how tokenization is extending beyond treasuries and into core asset classes like commercial real estate. Over $100 million in institutional-grade real estate have already been issued and transacted on Stellar, including multifamily and hospitality assets. Tokenization brings liquidity and transparency into markets that have historically been slow, opaque, and difficult to access. It is a clear example of RWAs moving into everyday investment categories using blockchain to broaden access while maintaining institutional standards. Across all of these partnerships, the common thread is usage, value in motion as opposed to value at rest. And that is why payments have become the clearest proof point. Danielle?
Well, that's awesome. Thanks, Jose. $55.6 billion in payment volume, up 52% year over year. Guys, this is really significant. It reflects sustained payment activity across remittances, commerce, and public sector rails on Stellar. That kind of volume doesn't just happen by accident. So, Jose, I'm going to send it back over to you. What does it look like for remittances?
Yeah, let's talk about remittances. So let's talk about MoneyGram and its stablecoin power mobile app with Crossmint. MoneyGram is putting stablecoins directly into high volume remittance flows. Their launch in Colombia provides critical access to the global financial system for families who rely on cross-border payments for everyday needs. It delivers faster settlement, lower cost, without changing the user experience that people already know. That is why this corridor matters. It is built to operate at scale inside an established global payments network. Colombia is just the first market, with the same structure designed to extend across major remittance corridors like Mexico, Brazil, and the Philippines. This is exactly how stablecoins move into everyday financial infrastructure, by integrating where the money is already moving. Another example is on credit cards. So Visa and Wirex give us a great example of how stablecoins are being integrated directly into existing card payment flows. In this case, card transactions are settling on-chain in USDC and URC across both USD and Euro markets with continuous availability. That usage has scaled quickly. Visa's stablecoin settlement is now roughly at a $4.6 billion run rate across all chains, up more than 4 times since September. This setup improves how funds move behind the scenes, faster settlement, lower operational friction, and clearer visibility across markets. Importantly, this is Visa deploying Stellar as part of its settlement infrastructure, not as an overlay or a workaround. When a global card network operates this way, it reflects confidence in performance, consistency, and regulatory alignment at scale. This is one pattern of adoption. The NEL will show us these same rails are powering national digital infrastructure, from universal basic income to everyday government payments.
Yeah, so we've talked about stablecoins moving money through individual corridors, remittances, card settlement, and institutional flows. The Marshall Islands extends that pattern to an entire national payment system. So in December, the Republic of the Marshall Islands launched the world's first on-chain distribution of universal basic income. Since then, more than 1.3 billion has been distributed using USDM1, a digitally native sovereign instrument backed by US Treasury bills. Payments flows directly to citizens' wallets with consistency, traceability, and reliability across widely dispersed islands. For a geographically dispersed nation like the Marshall Islands, this really solved a long-standing distribution challenge. Payments reached people reliably without relying on manual delivery or fragmented local infrastructure. That's open financial rails, supporting a sovereign's responsibility at national scope. So delivering payments at that level puts real pressure on the network underneath it. And that's what brings us to the infrastructure work that makes this possible. Tomer is going to walk us through WISC and the protocol upgrades designed to support sustained enterprise-grade use at this scale. Take it away, Tomer.
Thanks, Danelle. In September 2025, we shipped WISC, the largest protocol upgrade Stellar has delivered since smart contracts. This release was focused on increasing capacity and allowing high-volume financial applications to run in production with plenty of headroom for growth while keeping fees minimal. WISC introduced 8 core caps that materially changed how the network executes transactions. Parallel transaction execution, increased throughput under real-world load. Caching for store-bond state and contracts ensures that live state is readily available and cheap to access. We couldn't have done this without the solid foundation provided by Sorobon's state archival that we delivered in 2024. And to wrap it all, unified asset events make it easier than ever to consume token events across the entire Stellar ecosystem, blurring the line between Classic and Sorobon. As a result, our theoretical max TPS test is now at 3,000, and more importantly, this allowed validators to vote on a series of configuration changes to increase capacity and reduce cost. The latest change, SLP4 or SLIP4, was voted on just last week. SLIP4 has doubled most of Sorobon's ledger limits and reduced costs for non-refundable resources by up to 4 times. And I'm glad to say that overall, we've seen a 70% cost reduction in smart contracts invocations this week alone, and we're not done yet. WISC makes it possible to operate at enterprise scale with minimal costs and no compromises. The next requirement institutions raise is control, specifically around confidentiality and compliance, which is what the next upgrade was designed to support. Privacy is the next big opportunity for blockchains. Businesses and individuals alike should be able to transact without sharing their full transaction history with the world. And they need to do this in a way that prevents misuse and preserves regulatory compliance. X-Ray, now live on mainnet, facilitates privacy by extending the set of cryptographic building blocks available to builders on Stellar. These primitives make Stellar the most comprehensive L1 for zero-knowledge cryptography, which is the foundation for the most robust privacy-preserving systems available today. More specifically, we've integrated the BN254 elliptic curve for compatibility with systems designed for the Ethereum ecosystem. And we've also introduced built-in Poseidon and Poseidon 2 implementations, which are ZK-friendly hash functions. Integrating these at the core runtime means that developers can build privacy-preserving applications while keeping performance predictable and the cost down. This facilitates privacy that is configurable by design. Applications can configure compliance features as appropriate for the use case. For example, select a disclosure of sensitive details, sensitive information when required for audits, counterparties, or regulators, while keeping sensitive details protected by default. This gives teams the control they need to operate within established compliance and governance frameworks. The result is a privacy model that supports enterprise deployment today with native controls, clear disclosure paths, and infrastructure designed to operate reliably. All this work has been met with a lot of enthusiasm from our ecosystem, and they're already building the future of ZK on Stellar. Danelle?
So yeah, that was privacy, parallelism, and yes, Jerome, apparently we're calling it slips at this point. So thank you, Tomer. What we're seeing now is momentum driven by real pressure on the system. New usage patterns, new actors, and new risk models emerging at the same time. So that momentum is showing up in multiple directions all at once. So Tomer's going to walk us through some of those areas and why they matter going forward. Right back at you, Tomer.
Thanks, Danelle. So a lot has happened in 2025. Agents have been getting a lot of well-deserved attention recently, and we believe that agentic payments will explode in volume in 2026. To that end, we've been collaborating with Coinbase and specifically the X402 team to ensure machine-to-machine payments are standardized and that Stellar has first-class implementation for them. Expect more announcements in the very near future for X402 on Stellar. Also in 2025, breakthroughs in quantum computing have clarified that post-quantum security is no longer a distant problem. Luckily, Stellar was built with crypto agility in mind, so the core Stellar protocol can be easily upgraded with new signing schemes as these become available. Additionally, Sorobon contract accounts allow developers to prototype and build smart wallets with new signing schemes without any core upgrades. So today, one such example is the Soundness team that already has such a post-quantum ready smart wallet prototype utilizing zero-knowledge cryptography under the hood, and there are many more coming in 2026. Our focus is on resilience, standard-based primitives, upgradability, and just avoiding assumptions that don't age well. I'll hand it back to you, Danelle.
I like that. Avoiding assumptions that don't age well. Okay, Stellar has always been rooted in utility and what works. We have our eyes on what it's going to take to build systems that remain viable as conditions evolve. Growth at this stage comes from resilience. And we've been at this for a really long time. Standards-based primitive, upgrade paths that don't break trust, and avoiding assumptions that don't age well. So those are the things that we need to really focus on. That's what's driving momentum across the ecosystem today. Jose is going to share what that momentum looks like in practice. Take it away, Jose.
Thank you, Danelle. Let's talk about developers. Developers guide the Stellar network. Developers tell us where to go. And when we look at developer growth, we focus on where builders are choosing to spend their time, especially in a very competitive market. Over the last 3 years, the Stellar developer community almost tripled, with a growth rate of 171%. This growth significantly outperforms the broader industry, which saw a decline in total number of developers over the same period. The Stellar developer base is growing significantly faster than other ecosystems, whether EVM or SVM. That reflects deliberate choice and makes Stellar one of the fastest growing blockchains for devs, and we will continue to grow our share of developer activity. We also see this on the ground. Hack Meridian in Brazil brought together hundreds of builders, and led to over 100 new project submissions. At Consensus in Toronto, the first Stellar Builder Summit convened more than 100 developers working directly on payments, DeFi, and asset infrastructure. Our ambassador program is growing and holding events worldwide. And by the end of the year, the network saw more than 8,000 new builders at events, workshops, and hackathons around the world. Developers follow environments where teams can ship, grow, and reach users. And the data shows that builders are continuing to choose Stellar for that work. We have spent the last several minutes unpacking different parts of the ecosystem, on payments, on asset tokenization, financial institutions, public sector, and what you're seeing here brings it all together. In 2025, institutions chose Stellar to meet concrete requirements of scale, being compliance forward and reliable. The work spans many sectors and regions, but the underlying pattern is the same. Partners are using the network to move value, to issue assets, and to support regulated activity. What matters here is consistency. The same core infrastructure is supporting developers building new applications and partners deploying them into real markets. By the end of the year, that created a stable base, an ecosystem that has active participants, repeatable patterns, and shared standards. That base is what we are carrying over into 2026. Danelle will share now how we are building from here.
Thanks, Jose. Really, really wonderful work. What we're seeing here is real momentum across institutions, developers, and partners who are choosing Stellar because it works. That gives us an incredible foundation heading into 2026, and now we get to be intentional about where that takes us next. So, all right, this is where it gets really interesting. Everything we're doing in 2026 is guided by these 4 anchors. They're simple, they're intentional, and they keep us focused on what actually matters. First, open participation. We're building for real people, real institution, and real economies. Access matters. If it can't reach the world, it's not doing its job. Second, everyday financial utility. Payments, savings, and financial tools that people and businesses actually use. This is about usefulness at scale. Third, trustworthy tech stack. It's about all those things that we just talked about. Partners choose Stellar because it's reliable, it's consistent, and it's built to support serious systems over time. That's trust that's earned, and we protect that. And fourth, outcome-oriented execution. We move with purpose. We focus on what delivers results, we learn quickly, and we keep raising the bar. These anchors inform how we decide where to invest, how we support partners, and what we say yes, and a lot of times no to. So as we look ahead in 2026, here is where we are focused. First, accelerating asset adoption and cross-border usage. So that means enabling capital to move across markets, currencies, and jurisdictions, reliably and at scale. Second, enabling seamless enterprise and institutional adoption. So we're really focused on infrastructure that supports real operational requirements, including compliance, reliability, and global reach. Third, advancing core network capabilities. Even though we have this awesome system, we can't just stop here. We have to continue to invest in performance, security, and reliability so the network can support high volume financial systems. So together, these priorities reinforce one another. Adoption advances when infrastructure, institutions, and capital move together. That's the direction we're heading in 2026. Clarity, focus, and with a ton of confidence. So as we look to 2026 and beyond, I want to share how we're organizing our resources to support what comes next. In November, we updated our mandate framework, which maps directly to 3 strategic priorities that I just walked through. And today, you guys might have seen, we moved some XLM between accounts to ensure transparency for how we fund the 4 pillars of our mandate. Stellar growth, where we're putting the most resources. Developer programs, hackathons, our enterprise fund that backs wallets and payment companies, and anything that drives real adoption. This is how we make Stellar seamless to build on and seamless to use. The next one, product innovation. It's about building and seeing around the next corner. Sometimes we build tools, sometimes we acquire them, sometimes we fund others to create them. If something's missing that the ecosystem needs, this fund will help sure that it gets built. Assets and liquidity. This one's new. And honestly, it's where the market is telling us to focus. Having the fastest blockchain means absolutely nothing if there aren't real assets moving across it. So this funds partnerships to get stablecoins and tokenized assets on Stellar, market making so that the assets are actually tradable, and all of the on and off ramps that and the compliance work that needs to make them useful and really used in the real world. And then finally, SDF development, which funds SDF's operational expenses. You can track all of this in real time, including the move we just made today. We publish our XLM balances and quarterly reports, just like we always have. And the update reflects where Stellar is today. Production infrastructure for real financial applications. In 2025, we clearly saw that Stellar works for partners because it gives them what they need to operate in the real world. We saw a global asset manager tokenize hundreds of millions of dollars in US treasuries. We saw a sovereign nation deliver universal basic income to its citizens. Different objectives, different contexts, the same network. Demonstrates the flexibility and ease of use. That matters. It shows that Stellar can support serious capital and public purpose at the very same time, without compromising on scale, trust, or scalability. Across the ecosystem, partners weren't testing ideas. They were advancing real initiatives with clear goals, moving value, serving people, and building systems designed to grow. And they chose Stellar because it meets the requirements where finance, infrastructure, and responsibility converge. In 2026, we're building from strength, and the takeaway is simple. Financial services are the use case, and Stellar is delivering from payments at scale to new asset classes to bringing on the partners, enabling the next phase of growth. This is what Stellar was built for. So a big part of that work is how we bring people together around what's already working and how we help it scale. This year, to be the part of this is the year to be the part of the Stellar ecosystem. So Ellen, tell us about 2 ways you can do that.
I would love to, Danelle. Okay, so each year we host Meridian, the annual Stellar conference, and this year the Stellar ecosystem is headed to Abu Dhabi in October, which is so exciting. Meridian is where partners share their work, share what's scaling, and talk about what is coming next, and of course, celebrate the amazing work that's happening on the network and the builders who are doing it. So we can't wait. It's 2 full days focused on real deployments, shaping global finance, and this week we actually opened a call for speakers. So if you're doing the work and you want to talk about it at Meridian, scan the QR code here and apply. We are super excited to hear from you and can't wait to see what you guys think up and dream up for the stage. The next opportunity is a little more intimate, and it's something new we kicked off last year. It's called Stellar House, and it's where builders and operators and partners are coming together to like really personally connect, compare their notes, think about like partnerships that could be coming, share big ideas. And we host these in cities where momentum is real. So last year we hit New York and Miami, and next up is Mexico City, and it's happening in April. So if you're building on Stellar in LATAM, we'd love to see you there. More details will surface in the next couple of weeks. So keep your eyes peeled. And of course, follow us at stellar.org because we will definitely be talking about it there. Okay, so I think here are the takeaways. We're innovating, the ecosystem is growing, and Stellar is attracting some of the biggest names driving adoption. The financial system is modernizing, and Stellar is the infrastructure to power it. So now's your chance to ask all your questions, all your burning questions right now of our executives. So let's open it up and see what you guys got for us. All right, one question we have, Danelle, or actually any executive, anyone on the stage, is what are you guys most excited for 2026? Let's start easy.
I'll jump in first and just say I'm excited to see the privacy, like how we really think through privacy, because I think institutional privacy is different from the retail privacy side, and we don't want to obliterate the value of blockchain as we're implementing privacy on chain. So Tomer's doing a ton of work on this. Like there's lots of folks outside that are doing a lot of work on this. And I think that we got privacy wrong in the Web 2 days because we sort of just didn't really focus in detail around it. And we ended up with all those silly cookie footers and all the things that we have globally. And I think that when we're looking at privacy on chain, we need to make sure and protect the value of the immutable record, the traceability, all those things, while still recognizing that for global financial infrastructure, you need to have privacy of competitive information as well as for individuals. So I'm just really excited that we're focusing here, and that not just us, but we certainly are, but others are too. And the outcomes, I think, are going to be super valuable for the network, but also just for this ecosystem at large.
Tomer, what are you excited about?
I'm excited about scale. I think that we've been talking a lot about how functionally and like feature-wise we're pretty much feature complete. But I think that we have Whisk put in a lot of building blocks to scale up the network, especially on the execution layer. We still have some some building blocks around the lower level networking, the peer-to-peer network consensus. There's some JED code from 2014 that we probably need to rip apart because it's not a space station.
That's hilarious, actually.
Can't go without a JED reference in a purely. Okay, we have another question here, and I'm going to throw it to Jose, which is how much of PYUSD is on Stellar right now, Jose?
Yeah, one of the beauty of blockchains is you can see that on the Explorer, right? So the number is, I think it's about 7 million now in terms of market cap. Interestingly, the velocity of those assets is already pretty high. If you look at transaction volume, it's about 6 times that in just a couple of months, which is really important because, again, we're talking about a value motion versus value at rest. So the POSD that is on the Stellar network is rotating and it's being used for real world cases. You put it in context, this is very normal to be in the relatively single digit millions a couple of months after launch. When PayPal launched on Ethereum 3 years ago, and it sounds weird to speak in the third person there, but in the first couple of months that was on Ethereum, I think it was 7, 8, 9 million. So that's the normal pattern toward adoption. And I would keep an eye on evolution on POSD and Stellar. There is a ton that is coming up in terms of adoption in DeFi, in terms of institutional use case. So we have a ton of expectation about growth of POSD there. We see already 2 of the largest, I would say 3 stable coins out there for real world use cases that are deployed on Stellar. And we believe that POSD is going to do really well in our ecosystem.
Awesome. Okay, there's a few questions talking about RWAs headed towards consumers and consumer apps and the difference between kind of the consumer audience and this more institutional grade protocol. So Danelle, can you talk a little bit about where how we're focused on maybe institutional grade protocols and consumer apps and how we think about both of those?
Well, the truth is we actually need both, right? You need to be able to, in Sorbonne, we see so much activity with the individuals jumping in and being able to create that savings opportunity or the yield bearing access that they need. But you also need the institutional grade assets so that you have those to be available to the consumers. It's an interesting thing. I'll tell you that way back in 2019, I guess, when I first came on, when we were like really revamping and really focusing around the mission, we ultimately wanted the mission to be able to have that consumer lens to it. But then we realized that as we're building infrastructure, the infrastructure is really built for the businesses and for the institutions, but it's the B2B2C play, right? So we need infrastructure to be available and to be scalable and to be strong for the institutional grade actors so that they can bring these valuable assets to the consumers. So I wouldn't say that it's changed any of our focus. I think that ultimately we want to see humans, small businesses, large institutions be able to access this. But the ones that we touch mostly are the ones that are going to be the institutions and the small businesses that are building on Stellar. So I think that that's the way to think about this. This infrastructure has to be relatable, flexible, serious for all of those players. And ultimately, hopefully, the humans on the other side are the ones that are going to benefit from it.
Awesome. Great. One quick question that I'm going to take, it is an ask around whether or not we'll have events planned for Europe. We're going to have events just about everywhere this year, so stay tuned. We have a growing ambassador program where events are happening all the time. We're going to be at all the big conferences this year. So in Europe, we'll be at Paris Blockchain Week. We'll be at ECC. We'll be at Istanbul Blockchain Week, doing something really big and exciting there again this year. So keep your eyes peeled. We're going to be everywhere, and we'd love to see you there. So like I said, our at Stellar.org is your best shot at knowing where we're headed, and we'll keep you guys all posted as those plans start to come together for 2026. Okay.
Let me just jump in, Ellen. I see that there's a question about discussion regarding decentralization on Stellar, but that wasn't a topic that was talked about today. Honestly, that's just something that we're constantly having in our discussions, and also having in the work that we're doing, right? This is about, there's also some questions in here about tier one validators. We're always thinking about creating larger validators, larger networks of validators, so that we can make sure that there's more that are brought into tier one. This is work that's being done constantly. So even if it wasn't mentioned today, it's crucial to continue to focus on decentralization, to continue to focus on the validator group and who's participating in the tier one validator network. And this is something you've seen changes to it in 2025. You saw growth of it. You're going to continue to see that. And this is an area for us. We want more people to run validators and that are serious about running validators. So if that's something you're interested, please reach out to us, because there's ways that we can help to get you involved.
Awesome. Okay, here's one for Tomer. What's your take on community-built alternatives for RPCs or even core in other languages besides Go or C++?
Yes, anyone who has spent any time with me in the past couple of months know that I can't shut up about agentic coding. I think the world has completely changed and shifted, and it's beautiful, and computers are the most fun they've been since the 90s. So everything is awesome, and specifically rewriting software, well-spec'd, well-tested software is one of the greatest use cases of agentic coding. And so we've been seeing a lot of projects of taking this ancient code base, turning it to Rust. Anthropic actually just released with Opus 4.6 yesterday an experiment of completely rewriting the C compiler in Rust using LLM. So this is an amazing use case. More Stellar specific, Lee from the engineering team has actually created one of the projects, one legacy project that we have in the ecosystem is called XDRGen. That's this Ruby project to auto-generate XDR libraries from XDR specifications. And it's in Ruby. No one in Stellar actually writes Ruby anymore, so it's kind of this legacy thing. And Lee completely rewrote it from scratch in Rust. It's amazing, and we're going to start utilizing that as the main XDRGen soon. So it's great. If you're lurking on my GitHub, you know that I have a little toy Stellar Core Rust project, which tries to, as a proof of concept, to do that for Stellar Core. Stellar Core is a very complicated code base, 350,000 lines of code. It's super delicate. I think that doing a rewrite of something like that is still, TBD if this is actually something that we want to do, because there's a lot of sensitivities there. A blockchain needs to have, the accuracy needs to be up to the individual bit. And so you really can't get anything wrong. And so not sure if we're going to see Stellar Core being replaced anytime soon. But I do think, something like RPC or even other projects in the ecosystem, I would love to see more community engagement there.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to throw it to Jose. Can we expect a DTCC Stellar announcement soon?
Yeah, I think we will not talk about specific names, but I would say is, first of all, there is a lot of conferences that are coming up in the next few weeks. Will be a consensus in Hong Kong next week. Will be in tokenized Japan. There are a few announcements in general that are coming up because we are really chasing that institutional and enterprise segment. As you know, we have a bunch of names on the Forbes Global 2000 already that have chosen to deploy on Stellar. We have a very intentional effort to triple the number within this year. So there will be a bunch of announcements that will be coming up as soon as the first half of this year.
Translation, get excited, everybody. Okay, so Danelle, we'll take like 2 more questions. Danelle, we've got some questions around privacy. And I think, it's an important one for us as we've talked about like how to, talk more about what is privacy, what does institutional privacy mean? How does transparency and privacy work together on a network like Stellar while still preserving, the inherent benefits and advantages of an open and transparent network. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how we're thinking about that.
Well, yeah, and I saw the questions were like mostly about the dubiousness of the notion that privacy is actually what anybody wants. Look, KYC is one thing, right? Like when you think about KYC, you're dealing with money, you're dealing with financial institutions. This is something that's just required from a regulatory standpoint. So the question that was written in the chat was like, they require KYC, they require us to photo all the time, all of those things. And so really, do they care about privacy? That's their regulatory obligation, like unfortunately or fortunately. Like I think it protects a lot of us. It makes it so that people have a harder time committing fraud in trying to get into your assets when you're dealing with financial institutions. So that's one component of it. Privacy is from in different, certainly in different countries and in different states, privacy comes from institutions and individuals have privacy. And the privacy idea is that what you have an expectation of privacy in the things that you do. That is what blockchain allows, right? It's this expectation of privacy that you can actually protect your data and because it's anonymous as it goes in back and forth, but you can still have that transparent flow and you can still prove that the money moved from point A to point B. I think ZKs are going to do a lot to be able to protect the individuals on the edge without obliterating the very transparent and the auditability of the blockchain itself. This is an area that I think is really important. And in terms of like institutional privacy, it's this really complicated discussion because people are like, why should institutions have privacy about competitive information? But the truth is, you're not going to get institutions to build on this tech stack if they can't protect the flow of their funds, meaning how much they put in and they sent to out in the world, and that competitive information from other competitors that are out there. So we need to figure out, and there's payment channels, there's lots of ways to do this on Stellar already. And so you're going to kind of combine all of these things while still protecting the value of the blockchain, which is the immutable history, it is the transparency and the traceability of it. It doesn't ever mean that everybody gets to know exactly which funds Tomer is sending out to do things with, but you will be able to protect the flow of those funds and know where they started and where they ended. And that's, I think, what's really important. So this is I think that this is a really important discussion and a really important area. I'm gonna focus more on this myself, just in some writings. I know Tomer is just hyper focused on this from the standpoint of the product and the tech stack, but we're going to try to make this really good from protecting those things that we care about in the blockchain and protecting the usefulness of blockchain while still making sure that we're going to have institutional adoption and that users can protect their privacy.
Thanks, Danelle. Definitely more to come on that topic. It's part of our strategy, as Danelle was talking about. It's part of the work that the product team has been heads down on, and I think there's some really exciting stuff ahead that we're really excited to share with you guys quite soon. So and through the year. So keep your eyes peeled on for that one as well. All right, last question. We're going to throw it to Tomer. Is the Stellar Audit Bank an open-ended fund now? Sorry. I love agentic coding, but in regards to financial tools I trust, I really prefer some humans to also look over things. Don't we all? All right, Tomer.
Sure, and thank you, Danelle, for using me as an example for a person who sends money privately over the internet for things. Yes, the audit bank is going strong. Danelle mentioned that trustworthy technology is one of our core North Stars. And we have a dedicated budget for continually supporting new applications in the ecosystem. Obviously, DeFi is a sensitive area, and we want to make sure that we're completely covered there. And we're building tools not just for that, but also for ongoing monitoring of the network, both the core network and for protocols. We're investing even more into formal verification, given that there are more agents writing code. We want to make sure that we're throwing as many tooling as we can, as much tooling as we can, both automated and human beings, to ensure that that the network stays trustworthy.
Awesome. Okay. I think that's it for today. Thank you all so much for joining us today. This was actually the first time we've live streamed on X and YouTube and LinkedIn. We will definitely be back in Q1 doing the same. So thank you so much for tuning in today live. On behalf of all of us here, we are always excited to share the information and hear from you all and answer the questions. So hope you enjoyed the 2025 year in review. For those of you who want to listen again, you'll be able to rewatch this on X, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We will see you in a few months to talk Q1. And hopefully by then we may be talking about YOLO P26. So thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone.